Autism. We are hearing this word more and more every year. We know the number of children being diagnosed with autism is on the rise. But what is it? And more importantly, what does it mean for us as educators? According to the Oxford Language Dictionary, autism is defined as a developmental disorder of variable severity that is characterized by difficulty in social interactions and communication and by restricted or repetitive patterns of thought and behavior. Similar to that definition, the organization AutismSpeaks.com defines autism or autism spectrum disorder as a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. A few facts about autism. Autism is not a single disorder, but rather a wide range of autism subtypes. Autism spectrum disorder now encompasses multiple conditions that used to be diagnosed as separate disorders, including autistic disorder, pervasive development disorder not otherwise specified, and Asperger's syndrome. The cause of autism spectrum disorder is largely unknown. Scientists have determined that having an immediate family member with autism puts you at a higher risk, as well as being born to older parents. Having such conditions as Fragile X syndrome or tuberous sclerosis put a person at a greater risk of developing autism. Certain prescription drugs taken during pregnancy have also been linked to the disorder, specifically prescription drugs that have to do with seizures. Autism is 4 times more common among boys than it is among girls. It is estimated that 1 in every 59 American children will be affected with autism spectrum disorder. That number varies slightly depending on where you're getting your information. What is very clear is that numbers continue to rise, most likely due to an increased interest in studying the disorder and information being more readily available. There is not a single set of symptoms that classify a person as autistic. There are no medical tests used to diagnose autism. Doctors have to look at each individual's behavior and development in order to make informed diagnosis. Let's take a look at some of those symptoms. Children with autism spectrum disorder are often delayed in or lack social skills, meaning they avoid eye contact. They prefer to play alone, possibly alongside other children, but pay little attention to what the other children are doing. Their facial expressions are limited and are oftentimes inappropriate for what is taking place. They pay little attention to what others are doing. They will avoid physical contact and may become agitated if someone attempts to make physical contact. This is not to say that they never engage in physical contact with caregivers. It just needs to be their idea and on their terms. Once a child with autism becomes upset or distressed, it can be difficult for them to regain control of their emotions. It is difficult for children with autism to relate to feelings of others and express their own feelings. Communication can also be a struggle. 40% of children with autism do not speak at all, making it important for teachers to develop methods of communication that allow you to connect with your students with autism. This may include sign language, visual aids, or the use of technology. The level at which children with autism can communicate varies significantly. Some students may not speak at all, while, as previously discussed, some may have full verbal communication skills. Their language development is often delayed. Some children have age-appropriate vocabulary until 18 to 24 months and then regress. This is not always the case. They also have a tendency to repeat words, phrases, or noises over and over. They're rarely likely to use gestures like pointing and waving. Children with autism will often speak in a monotone voice using very little fluctuation in their pitch. In most cases, they do not get sarcasm or jokes. Since reading emotions can be a challenge for a student with autism, sarcasm and jokes lose their meaning. It is important to be literal and straightforward when communicating with a person with autism. When asking questions to a student with autism, you may get back responses that are completely unrelated to the topic. Please do not assume that these students are not listening or do not understand. That could be the case, but they may also lack the skills to adequately communicate back to you the answers you are seeking. Students with autism spectrum disorder may have interests that are unique to other children their own age. They may find it enjoyable to repeatedly line up their toys or other objects in very specific order. Disrupting this order can cause distress to the child. The way in which they play with the toy may be very specific and not meant for its original purpose, or they may only be interested in parts of the toy. The most common one we hear of is the spinning of wheels on toy vehicles, but it can be really any part of the toy. The way the pieces of the toys fit together, the tails of toy animals, or the buttons you push to turn on the lights and sounds of a toy. They may be very specific about how items are organized and prefer to maintain an organized environment. As a teacher of a student with autism, you would need to be aware of this preference. It can be very distracting for this student if items are out of place. Students with autism like and need to have a predictable daily routine. They do not like change and do not adjust well to change. It won't be possible every single day, but offering a routine is one way we can add a level of peace to all students' day. A person with autism may have a very specific field of interest. They will become extremely knowledgeable about this topic. I once knew a child who was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome who was fascinated with maps. I could give the student a highway number and he could tell me every city and town along the highway throughout the entire United States. It was amazing. However, this can also be a challenge for students with this characteristic because they will find it difficult to find interest in other topics and struggle to understand while everyone else isn't fascinated with their interest. This can also make it difficult for these students to maintain relationships with other students. Repetitive motions can be a source of comfort for some students. This may include flapping their hands, rocking back and forth, spinning in circles, tapping, or even pounding their hands on their head. Other behaviors that you may see in students with autism spectrum disorder are hyperactivity. They may find it hard to stay in one place for too long or focus on one assignment for extended periods of time. They may be impulsive and even become aggressive. It is important to have a clear plan in place for this type of behavior. Having a clear plan that you have practiced numerous times will be crucial when the actual moment hits. It will be key for you as a professional to maintain a calm demeanor while providing safety for this student and the rest of the class. Children with autism may have abnormal eating and sleeping habits. The texture of food may be an issue, and it may be necessary for the school or parent to provide the student with an alternate lunch every day. People with autism also tend to have irregular sleep patterns, which can make it difficult for them to maintain a regular school schedule. You may need to schedule in rest time throughout the day in order to help this student be more successful during wake hours. They may have abnormal emotional reactions to events and situations. Turning off the lights without warning may push the child into a state of panic, or rearranging seats in the classroom may cause the student to refuse to sit in their newly assigned seat. They tend to be hypersensitive to their environment. Sounds, smells, lighting, and textured surfaces can all be sources of discomfort and stress for a student with autism. It is important to be aware of these triggers early so that you can make adjustments before the student arrives in your classroom. Not all of these situations can be planned for or prevented, so again, it is important to have a well-developed plan in place if the student does have a negative reaction to their environment. I cannot stress this enough. Always keep in mind that no two students are exactly the same, just as no two autism spectrum disorder diagnoses are the same. Every student needs to be viewed as an individual with a diverse skill set and challenges. Never assume that what works for one student last year will or should work this year. Of course, we need to have a plan to be prepared, but we also need to meet each student with a blank set of expectations. We are going to take the time to get to know our students and their individual needs. We will plan, practice, implement, adjust, and repeat until we get it right. As we begin to develop a plan, we will need to assess the student's level of support. Students with autism have varying needs and levels of support. Students with autism will land somewhere on this spectrum depending on their current developmental state and their current situation. That level will range from level 1, high-functioning autism, to level 2, mid-range autism, to a level 3, severe autism. If a student is in the high-functioning range on the spectrum, the student will still need support. This student will likely struggle to communicate effectively and be unable to initiate social reactions with other students. They may also require strict routines and lack organizational skills that would otherwise help them be independent students. With regular support, these students' behaviors may even become unnoticeable to a random observer. A student in the second level of functioning on the autism spectrum will have more defined social and communication challenges. They may be more easily upset when there is a schedule change or a disruption to the environment. These children are also more likely to participate in repetitive behaviors and have very narrow interests, making it more difficult for them to function in classroom situations. This student requires a higher level of support throughout the day. A student at a level 3 severe autism on the spectrum requires extensive support. This student will have the same symptoms as a level 1 or level 2 student, but to a much higher degree. They may completely lack the verbal and nonverbal skills necessary to express themselves, which make it challenging for them to interact with other students and adults, to transition between classroom activities and complete the same assignments as would be expected of other students. So with all that being said, what can we do as educators to give all students, but specifically students with an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, a more productive, positive learning environment? We can start by setting students up for success. The most effective way to do this is to plan ahead. We need to understand the student before they enter our classroom. We do this by collaborating with those who know the student best and with those who are highly educated on autism spectrum disorder. This is also how we begin to build our support network, which you are going to need to have in place. Continue to collaborate with these individuals on a regular basis. Next, personalize your plan to meet the specific needs of the individual child as best as you can. If the child reacts to harsh lighting, invest in some light covers or make your own. If smells are a challenge for your student, put the Scentsy or diffuser in your closet for the rest of the year. Set a routine and post it in the classroom where it's easy to see with visual clues. Set reminders for yourself to give the student advance notice of transitions. As often as possible, stick to your routine. This is beneficial for all students. Keep in mind when communicating with a student with autism, they are likely to not understand sarcasm or jokes. Make sure your directions are literal and straightforward. Use visual representations when appropriate to help guide your directions. This does not mean that you cannot be playful with your student. You need to base that decision on the information you gain by getting to know the student individually. Be flexible. What you've always done in the past may need to be adjusted to better meet the needs of this year's students. Assignments may need to be modified or changed altogether. This is a great place to use the support system you've put in place. Bounce ideas off of them and ask them to share their ideas. It's extremely important to create an inclusive classroom. Spend time talking to all of your students about the importance of recognizing and celebrating all of our unique qualities. Express the importance of including all students in play and group projects. Because it is so important and will make a huge difference in your day-to-day classroom experience and that of your students, plan ahead. Help to give your students the best chance at success by having alternate assignments ready in case one is a bust. Check the room for possible stressors, and most importantly, practice your plan for handling an outburst should one occur. And finally, as in all situations, choose to see the positive. Find what makes each of your students uniquely wonderful. Write them down and reflect on them regularly. When you've had a particularly hard day or you feel yourself becoming frustrated, they will be invaluable. Remind yourself that you are not alone because you've built a strong support system. Also, keep in mind that while you are on the outside looking in, your student is trying to thrive in an environment that was not designed for them, and they're doing the best that they can. Thank you.